My sister pawned my mother's wedding ring, saying, "Dead people don't need memories." I tracked it down and bought it back for $1,500. At her engagement, she panicked when she couldn't find it. I watched her tear apart her jewelry box, then quietly slipped it on my finger and said, "Looking for this." I, 32M, never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. 3 months ago, my world turned upside down when I discovered what my sister had done. Mom passed away 2 years ago after a long battle with cancer, and losing her nearly broke our family apart. What happened next broke it completely. The ring meant everything to Mom. She'd tell us stories about how Dad saved for months to buy it, working double shifts at the factory just to afford the modest diamond. It wasn't expensive by today's standards, but it represented their love story. When she got sick, she'd twist it around her finger whenever she was anxious about treatment. In her final weeks, she made me promise to keep it safe for the family. My sister and I had always been close growing up. She was 2 years younger, and I'd always looked out for her. But after Mom died, something changed. She became distant, bitter. She blamed everyone for not doing enough, for not catching the cancer sooner. The grief consumed her differently than it did me. The discovery happened by accident. I was helping Dad clean out Mom's jewelry box, something we'd been putting off for months. We were going through her things together, sharing memories about each piece. That's when I noticed the empty spot where the wedding ring should have been. Dad's face went white when I asked about it. He told me my sister had taken it weeks after the funeral. She'd claimed she wanted something to remember Mom by, and Dad, still drowning in his own grief, had agreed. But the ring wasn't with her other jewelry when we looked. My stomach dropped as the realization hit me. I confronted her that evening. She was at her apartment, the one she'd moved into after dropping out of college for the 3rd time. When I asked about the ring, her face flushed red. She tried to deflect at first, asking why I was going through Mom's things. But I pressed her, and eventually, the truth came out. She'd pawned it 6 months ago. 6 months. She'd been sitting on this secret while Dad and I grieved, while we talked about Mom's memory, while we planned the memorial service. The worst part was her justification. She told me dead people don't need memories, that Mom was gone and the ring was just sitting there doing nothing. She needed the money for rent, for her car payment, for her life. I felt something break inside me when she said those words. This wasn't just about money or even the ring itself. This was about respect, about family, about honoring the woman who gave us everything. My sister had reduced Mom's most precious possession to a quick cash grab. She told me she'd gotten $800 for it at some pawn shop downtown. $800 for a ring that held 40 years of marriage, of love, of memories. I asked her which shop, but she claimed she couldn't remember. She was lying, and we both knew it. That night, I started my search. I called every pawn shop in the city, describing the ring in detail. The modest diamond, the white gold band, the tiny inscription inside that read, "Forever, J+M." Most places were helpful, but had nothing matching the description. After 2 weeks of calls and visits, I was starting to lose hope. Then I found it. A small shop on the east side of town, tucked between a laundromat and a check-cashing place. The owner, an elderly man with kind eyes, remembered the ring immediately. He described my sister perfectly, down to the nervous way she'd fidgeted while negotiating the price. The ring was still there, sitting in a display case among dozens of other people's surrendered treasures. Seeing it behind that glass, reduced to inventory, made my chest tight. But it was safe. It was recoverable. The owner wanted $1,500, nearly double what my sister had received. But that's how pawn shops work. I didn't have that kind of money lying around, but I didn't care. I took out a personal loan, emptied my savings account, and bought back my mother's ring. Holding it again felt like getting a piece of her back. I slipped it onto my pinky finger, the only finger it would fit, and made a decision. My sister would never know I'd found it. Not yet. For months, I carried the ring with me everywhere. It became my secret, my connection to Mom that my sister had tried to sever. I watched my sister during family dinners, during holidays, during the times when Dad would mention Mom's jewelry. She never showed any guilt, never brought up the ring, never seemed to care about what she'd done. Then came the engagement announcement. My sister had been dating this guy for about a year, someone she'd met at her new job. He seemed decent enough, though I wondered if he knew about her tendency to prioritize money over everything else. The engagement party was planned for a Saturday evening at Dad's house, a small gathering of family and close friends. The week before the party, my sister called me. She sounded frantic, almost panicked. She told me she'd been going through Mom's jewelry, trying to find something special to wear for the engagement photos. She wanted to honor Mom's memory, she said, by wearing something that had belonged to her. The irony wasn't lost on me. Now that she had something to celebrate, something that mattered to her, she suddenly wanted to connect with Mom's memory. She asked if I'd seen the wedding ring anywhere, if Dad had moved it or put it somewhere safe. I told her I hadn't seen it, which was technically true. I hadn't seen it in Mom's jewelry box. She spent the next few days tearing apart Dad's house, looking through every drawer, every box, every possible hiding place. She called me twice more, increasingly desperate. She even suggested that maybe someone had stolen it, that we should file a police report. The desperation in her voice should have made me feel guilty, but instead, it felt like justice. The night of the engagement party arrived. I dressed carefully, making sure the ring was secure on my finger but hidden under my sleeve. The house was full of relatives, friends, and her fiancé's family. Everyone was celebrating, toasting the happy couple, sharing stories and laughter. I watched my sister throughout the evening. She was trying to be happy, trying to play the part of the glowing bride-to-be, but I could see the stress underneath. She kept touching her neck, her ears, checking her jewelry as if she was still hoping to find something of Mom's to wear. About halfway through the party, she disappeared upstairs. I followed quietly, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. She went straight to Mom's old room, the one Dad had barely touched since the funeral. I could hear her moving things around, opening drawers, searching through the jewelry box again. When she came back downstairs, her eyes were red. She'd been crying. Part of me felt bad for her, but then I remembered her words about dead people not needing memories. I remembered the months of lies, the casual way she dismissed Mom's most precious possession. The moment came during the toast. Her fiancé was giving a speech about love and family, about how excited he was to join our family and carry on the traditions that Mom had started. He mentioned how much he wished he could have met her, how he'd heard so many wonderful stories about her kindness and generosity. My sister's face crumpled. She excused herself and rushed to the bathroom. I gave her a few minutes, then followed. She was standing at the sink, staring at her reflection, tears streaming down her face. She looked up when I entered, and I could see the guilt and regret written all over her features. She told me she'd made a terrible mistake. She said she'd been so angry after Mom died, so lost and confused, that she'd done something unforgivable. She wanted to tell me about the ring, about what she'd done, but she was too ashamed. She said she'd tried to get it back, but the pawn shop owner told her it had been sold. I listened to her confession, watched her break down completely. She said she'd give anything to have it back, that she'd been planning to wear it at her wedding, that she wanted to feel connected to Mom on the most important day of her life. The irony was overwhelming. That's when I made my move. I slowly pulled my hand from my pocket, letting my sleeve slide up to reveal the ring on my finger. Her eyes went wide, confusion and hope and disbelief all mixing together on her face. I told her I'd been looking for this, letting the words hang in the air between us. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She stared at the ring, then at me, then back at the ring. The confrontation that followed was quiet but intense. I told her I knew what she'd done, that I'd spent weeks tracking down the ring, that I'd paid $1,500 to buy back what should never have been sold in the first place. I told her about the loan, about the sleepless nights, about the betrayal I'd felt when I learned the truth. She tried to explain, to justify her actions again, but the words sounded hollow now. She offered to pay me back, to reimburse me for what I'd spent, but I told her it wasn't about the money. It was about respect, about family, about the promises we make to the people we love. I slipped the ring off my finger and held it up between us. For a moment, I thought about giving it back to her, about letting her wear it at her wedding, about choosing forgiveness over revenge. But then I remembered her words about dead people not needing memories, and I slipped it back onto my finger. I told her that Mom's ring would stay with someone who understood its value, someone who wouldn't trade it for rent money or car payments. I told her that actions have consequences, that some betrayals can't be undone with apologies and promises. She begged me to reconsider, to think about what Mom would have wanted. But I reminded her that Mom had wanted the ring to stay in the family, to be treasured and protected. My sister had made her choice 6 months ago when she walked into that pawn shop. Update 1. The engagement party ended awkwardly. My sister tried to compose herself and return to the celebration, but everyone could tell something was wrong. Her fiancé kept asking if she was okay, if there was anything he could do. She brushed off his concerns, but I could see the strain in her smile. I stayed for the rest of the evening, playing the part of the supportive brother. But every time I caught my sister's eye, I could see the anger and hurt there. She was furious with me, but she couldn't say anything without revealing what she'd done. The secret was eating her alive. Dad pulled me aside before I left. He'd noticed the tension between my sister and me, and he wanted to know if everything was okay. I told him we'd had a disagreement, nothing serious, just sibling stuff. He looked skeptical but didn't press the issue. Over the next few weeks, my sister tried several times to get me to change my mind. She called, texted, even showed up at my apartment once. She offered to pay me back double what I'd spent, triple even. She promised she'd learned her lesson, that she'd never do anything like that again. But I held firm. The ring stayed on my finger, a constant reminder of what she'd done and what I'd had to do to fix it. I started wearing it openly, not hiding it under my sleeve anymore. Family members began to notice, asking about the ring, commenting on how nice it looked. My sister's wedding planning became increasingly stressful. She'd wanted to incorporate Mom's memory into the ceremony somehow. But without the ring, she felt like she had nothing meaningful to connect her to our mother. She asked Dad about other pieces of jewelry, but nothing felt right to her. The guilt was consuming her. She'd lost weight, wasn't sleeping well, and her relationship with her fiancé was showing signs of strain. He didn't understand why she was so obsessed with finding something of Mom's to wear, why it mattered so much to her. Update 2. 3 weeks before the wedding, my sister broke down completely. She called me in the middle of the night, sobbing, begging me to meet her somewhere so we could talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near her apartment. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, her hair unwashed, her hands shaking as she tried to hold her coffee cup. She told me she'd confessed everything to her fiancé, about the ring, about the pawn shop, about what she'd said about dead people not needing memories. Her fiancé was horrified, not just about what she'd done, but about the fact that she'd hidden it from him for so long. He was questioning whether he really knew her, whether he could trust her. The wedding was in jeopardy. She begged me again to give her the ring back, not for herself, but to show her fiancé that she could make things right, that she could earn forgiveness. She said she'd do anything, pay anything, sacrifice anything to undo what she'd done. I felt a moment of wavering. Seeing her so broken, so desperate, made me question whether I'd gone too far. But then I thought about Mom, about the promises I'd made, about the months of lies and deception. Some things can't be undone with tears and apologies. I told her that her relationship problems weren't my responsibility. She'd made her choices, and now she had to live with the consequences. The ring was staying with me, and that was final. She left the coffee shop in tears, and I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. Update 3. The wedding was postponed. My sister's fiancé needed time to think, to process what he'd learned about the woman he'd planned to marry. Dad was devastated, confused about why his daughter's engagement had fallen apart so suddenly. My sister finally told Dad the truth about the ring. The conversation didn't go well. Dad was furious, not just about the pawning, but about the lies, about the months of deception. He felt betrayed by both of his children, her for what she'd done, and me for not telling him about it. He demanded that I give the ring back to my sister, that we find a way to work through this as a family. But I refused. I told him that I'd made a promise to Mom, that I'd spent my own money to honor that promise, and that my sister had forfeited any right to the ring when she chose money over memory. The family split was complete. Dad sided with my sister, believing that forgiveness and reconciliation were more important than punishment and revenge. My sister's fiancé eventually broke off the engagement entirely, unable to get past the betrayal and deception. My sister spiraled into depression. She quit her job, moved back in with Dad, and spent most of her time in her old room. The guilt and shame were overwhelming her, and she blamed me for destroying her life. But I didn't feel guilty. Every time I looked at the ring on my finger, I felt connected to Mom, felt like I'd honored her memory and kept my promise. My sister had made her choice when she walked into that pawn shop. I'd simply made mine when I walked out of it. The ring sits on my finger now as I write this, catching the light from my desk lamp. It's not about revenge anymore, if it ever really was. It's about keeping promises, about understanding that some things are more valuable than money, about remembering that the people we love deserve better than to have their memories pawned off for rent money. My sister may never forgive me, and Dad may never understand my choice. But Mom's ring is safe now, protected by someone who understands its true value. And sometimes, that has to be enough. The family may be broken, but Mom's memory remains intact. In the end, that's what matters most.